Can you remember how old your son was when he got diagnosed with autism?
He was 2 years, 3 months.
Okay, 2 years, 3 months. And what actually prompted you to get him screened?
He he did a lot of things that I couldn't explain for his age.
Okay.
Remember, I have 3 children, so I'm not a first time mom. And he's not my first, he's my last. My firstborn is 16 years old, so I've been in the game for a long time.
Yeah.
I knew there was something not adding up, not in a bad way, but he was just the way he looked at things. He didn't look at things like a child or like a baby. My son started reading at the age before he was 2 years old.
Oh, wow.
Because he could read, I neglected the fact that when you ask him his name or how are you, he wouldn't respond to say fine,
Hmm.
which was not normal. It wasn't typical, let me put it that way. And he started nursery very early. So one day, I got a call from school and said we need to have a meeting, and then went into the meeting and they said, "Do you know your son reads?" I'm like, "Okay, really? Yes, I know, but I thought because he was already in school, he was taught in school, and the school is telling me no. I thought he learned from home. You taught him. I didn't teach this boy nothing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was self-taught." So his teachers also told me he doesn't give eye contact. I said, yes, I've noticed that. And they said, oh, children who don't give eye contact, you have to pay attention. I'm like, pay attention in what way? He tiptoes. Yes, I know. But I didn't see them as signs of anything because each time he tiptoed around me, I had made a comment saying if he was a girl, I would register him for ballet lessons because he could stand on those toes for hours and walk on them.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So at some point, I remember I used to live in the UK. So in England, when you give birth, you are assigned a health visitor. So her duty is to, when you're discharged from the hospital, she follows you home and monitors the baby for weeks. Then when she discharges from coming home, she still keeps calling you to check on the milestone of the child. So that was the first person I complained to. I got in contact with a pediatric doctor, and from there they said, okay, we have to have him assessed. But before they gave me a date for assessment, I already knew there was something different about my son. There was something unique about him. And I have a brother who's a medical doctor. So I called my brother and I told him, I have something is different about my son. And he said, do not call what isn't. Your son just strikes me like a very intelligent boy. And I said, okay. But being the curious mom that I am, I took to Google. I remember everything I have seen him do. At that point, I started paying attention to everything he was doing. And I listed everything, and that was the first time I came across the word. I have heard of autism before, but have never really paid attention about autism. I knew back then they were people that had a few challenges or something, but I never really understood. So that was when I got this questionnaire asking me to fill the questions and see. And I, there were like 20 questions, and it said tick the box if you show signs of any of this. I was obviously answering for my son,
Mm-hmm.
and if I remember, my son must have ticked 13 or 14 out of 20. That was like, oh wow, okay, there's something here. So I had already read about autism, started Googling, trying to understand, just doing my research before I got a diagnosis. So by the time I got referred to a pediatric doctor, I had a meeting. And now we were in lockdown in the UK. And They booked an appointment. I had three. There was a neurosurgeon. There was a child psychologist. There were like three of them. They did about an hour and a half assessment because with autism, it's not a disease. It's not what can be tested in the blood or anything. It's just to observe patterns of behavior. So they had to watch him and just see how he plays with items, how he interacts, communicates, what he's doing. And 3 days later, they called me and said, "Have you heard of the word autism?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "Your son is autistic."
Wow. And looking back at that, do you remember what your first reaction was when you actually got that confirmation? Because you, like you said, you already had your suspicion.
I cried. I only cried because I already knew. So it was like, you're just confirming what I know. It was a confirmation of what I had suspected, what I had Googled and read about, even if I didn't have the qualifications to diagnose my child. So just hearing them say what I had already suspected just brought tears down my eyes.
Oh, wow. And
Yeah.
I guess there was an adjusting period, right? So how was that adjusting phase for you, not just you, but you and your entire family?
Ooh, okay. There was nothing like denial or accepting because I had already made my research.
Okay.
So at that point, I didn't have doubts. I was not in shock. There was nothing. I just literally swung into what can be done, trying to understand how do we move forward. And I remember after the diagnosis, I spoke to my brother and he said, "What type of ASD does your son have?" I said, I asked them and they told me, "Oh, England, we just generalize them now. We don't separate them. It's just ASD." And he said, "Oh, really? It would have been easier if because they have Asperger's, they have the Rett, they're just different branches, and there's the savant." And he said, I said, "I don't." I said, "But he's very intelligent." But I remember what I was told in the words of the doctors. They said he has more advantages than disadvantages. So
Yeah.
that, and knowing my son, that just gave me courage and hope.